team. It's 7:01, so we're going to get started. Again, if you didn't hear me before, my name's Maggie Feiner. I'm a lead trainer for a Sound Beginning program, and if you're here for the free intro to training, this is the place you want to be. Please, 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 because we're such a ginormous group tonight, we're about up to 80 people, to use the chat function if you have issues. And what I'll be doing is checking those at the end. So if you have a question midstream, just type it in there. Even if it gets answered later on, I'd rather you just type it in so that you don't forget. My goal always is to try to get this presentation done within an hour and then leave about half an hour for questions afterwards. I tend to be a bit of a talker and go a little bit over the hour, but just so you know, there will be opportunities for Q&A at the end. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. It usually just takes just a moment, so stand by. All right, so hopefully you guys are seeing a title page to a Sound Beginning program. And again, I've got a good friend and colleague, Jessie, on with me tonight. She's going to help us just make sure that we don't have any technical difficulties for the first 10 minutes or so. She will let me know if there's any tech stuff on my end. But aside from that, let's get started with tonight's discussion and an intro to training. So what is this all about? This program was started about a decade ago now, and it started with our book, Adopting a Dog, Start Off Right with a Sound Beginning. And at the back of the book was a CD, it still is there, even though the technology is rapidly becoming totally outdated, with a CD in which it had calming music, scientifically proven and composed to calm down dogs. And it started being used all over the greater Chicagoland area and more to calm kennels at night. And it also really helped new adopters figure out what they were supposed to do for the first 2 weeks. So if you've seen our book or you plan on getting our book or going with our program, it's a very easy step-by-step guide, especially for the first 2 weeks, and how to get off right with your new adopted pet. And what was really important about this book is it really helped dogs or people with dogs that didn't fit in the normal program, right? Most shelter, rescue, foster dogs don't fit into put them in the 10 to 16 week puppy socialization class and then go on to, from puppy preschool, go on to puppy kindergarten. I mean, some dogs that you good people have probably adopted or plan on adopting are several years old, maybe even seniors. They may have gone through multiple homes. So this is a book that kind of fulfilled that need for, doesn't really matter what age, background, what have you with this dog is, how do you start off on the right foot? How do you get into that right class, even if there isn't one there available to you? So what we'll be, and also part of this program, so what we'll be doing is near the end, I'll tell you a little bit more about the program or our classes in case you're interested in signing on. But just so you guys also know a little bit big picture is we do as much as we possibly can. We like to take a holistic approach to making this recently adopted animal as successful as possible. And what I mean by taking a holistic approach is that we involve a lot of calming therapies within our program, which might sound kind of hokey, but again, all of these are scientifically proven to help calm dogs. So we still have the music piece, which now you can download from all the major music carriers. We also use in the shelters which we teach in, and then also give to you calming essential oils, especially that really helps, I find, when I go into work in shelters, to have a smell, whether it's Adaptil, if you guys have heard of that product, or the essential oils that we use that were composed really more concocted, if you will, by vet behaviorists, that really don't necessarily mask the smell of other pets, potentially in stress and things in a shelter environment, but it certainly helps with making positive associations. And again, in our program, in our classes, we help steer you down that path where your dog usually comes into our classes very well adapted already, because we've helped you with with training and other techniques to get them to feel at home even before they go into a new environment or come back to the shelter for classes, which I think is probably a little bit intimidating for most dogs. Like, why am I back here, right? So, so anyway, our program is pretty cool, and it's very unique in that it's not just training, it's not just literature. We are also giving you as many tools as possible to peel off layers of stress so that your dogs are very successful within our program. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do in this intro to training class, you're probably thinking, dog body language, learning dog body language. Why are we doing this? Well, I'll tell you why. For how it goes with training is that if you can understand how your dog is feeling, I promise you, they're going to be much more likely to succeed in your home. You're going to be able to advocate for your dog, and you're going to make much faster strides with your training and just getting them acclimated in general if you know what they are quote unquote saying. All right, so dog body language, it's all in the body, right? They're not verbal like we are. They would never do anything like an hour and a half long lecture, right? But they are speaking with their bodies all the time. So let's start with what's a relaxed dog look like? A relaxed dog, and normally we can identify them, right? They look relaxed. They're usually in some sort of fun position, like wiggling. They have loose bodies. They're either wiggling around, wagging their tails, doing play bows, rolling over and playing with a toy. They have soft eyes. You would never see the whites of the eyes on a relaxed dog. Their ears would be nice and soft. Now, some of this is know your own breed, right? Like if you, let's say you adopted a Doberman and their ears had been trained, like cut and trained, they're pretty much always going to be in this one position most of the time. But I promise you, within that position, there are relaxed positions, and then there's the not so relaxed positions, right? When they're like starting to fold back or they're really hyper alert forward. So part of this is a little bit getting to know your own dog when it comes to relaxation, or what the relaxed positions are. Another big cue to a dog that's comfortable with their surroundings is an open mouth. They almost get this anthropomorphic smile, like the lab in this picture. But notice how the Weimaraner in the background doesn't have their mouth open, but that dog's very relaxed as well. And that is because certain breeds they don't get the little smile as much. Usually the bully breeds, because they've been bred, for that smoosh face, and it tends to be, I think, almost probably uncomfortable for them to have their mouths agape, right? So, so relaxed dogs, loose, curvy bodies, very smooth faces, no whites of the eyes, and oftentimes you will get that smile when their jaws are so relaxed that they go slack and give you that little anthropomorphic smile. So again, I was saying before too, some of this is like context specific though, right? Know your own dog, know your own breed, know what your dogs look like in a training session. There's a good example. There's a bunch of Dobermans with trained ears, and they look kind of stiff and not very loose, right? But Julie is in the process of working all those dogs, and they're in a group training session right now. And somebody who's worked with dogs training, if they've been trained to station like that, that's a relaxed stationing position, right? So it's context specific as well. And here's a good example of know your own dog. So see this dog here in this corner to the right? He looks a little bit stiff to me, like his ears, I don't know, the ears look like they're kind of going back and the mouth is closed. But this is this dog's normal relaxed position. And how do we know? I'll show you the next picture. There's Jackson again at home, and then the picture to the right is Jackson at the vet. You see how that's kind of know your own dog. There you can tell he's very stressed. He's hunkered down. You see the whites of the eyes. He normally likes to hold his ears back. When he's stressed, his ears go forward. So something, that you'll figure out with your dog over time. Now, when your dog is not relaxed, you kind of go into this realm, which is quite broad. that is we call calming signals. In the literature, they're often referred to as conflict signals. We just don't like to call them that because they don't necessarily mean that the dog is conflicted per se, right? So if you see the column, the descriptions of calming signals there to your right, dogs will use this body language in the column on the left, and we're going to go through more pictures and video examples. So that's why I'm not going to read them to you because you'll get more description here in a minute. But they use these calming signals to avoid conflict and unpleasant interactions. They use them to calm down their own nervousness and fear. They use them to tell others that they're not a threat, not only other dogs, like avoiding and diffusing threats from other dogs, but they use it with people all the time. We just don't normally understand what we're seeing. So I'm going to go through some of the most common conflict signals that we tend to see. And one of them is a tongue flick. And that is when it almost looks like a snake. The little tongue goes in and out really, really quickly. I have a nervous Nelly dog. She does this all the time when something novel has popped up in the environment or she's trying to cope. I kind of liken the tongue flick, at least with my dog, as my nervous habit of when I'm really concentrating on something or maybe a little bit nervous about something, that I'll start chewing on my nails, right? But the tongue flick looks a lot like a snake, and where just the tip of the tongue goes in and out really, really quickly. Yawn is also a common calming signal. And what you'll notice, okay, so let me tell you a little bit more about just dog language in general. So in humans, when we're trying to be socially gracious, we look somebody in the eye and we say, "Hi, how do you do?" With dogs, that would be totally socially inappropriate. Meeting another dog for the first time and locking eyes with them is a very assertive, in your face, up in your grill type of behavior. So a yawn is what, and it's kind of it has multiple purposes almost. One, it's for the dog to calm down their own nervousness and fear. Two, if you see a dog yawning, what does it naturally do? It breaks eye contact, right? It causes this squint and this look away. And then three, yawns, just like with humans, are contagious. And so if a dog yawns at another dog, it's almost like they're throwing up the puppy peace sign or asking for the paw shake, right? They're yawning and they're breaking eye contact, which is the appropriate greeting. And then it's contagious, and usually the other dog yawns back, unless, there's some major conflict that's about to go down that, unbeknownst to the dog yawning at the other one. So yawning is a really great canine communication example. So then there are some calming signals that start to suggest that the dogs are a little bit more than just coping or signaling to the other dog that they, mean no harm, that they're, that's a little bit more advanced than, say, like the throwing of the puppy peace sign. So panting excessively when it's not hot. Also in this picture, here's the thing that's interesting about calming signals in dogs too, is what happens is that if, the dog is not that stressed, you'll see them maybe look away, break eye contact, maybe do some tongue flicks. But if they're getting progressively more worried, you see calming signals compound upon one another. So in this picture here on the left, this dog is not only panting excessively out of stress, but look, it's hiding pretty much under the table, and there's nothing relaxed about its face or its ear set, right? Similarly, in that picture on the right, whale eye is a good indicator of stress in a dog, or an indication that a dog needs space because they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed or worried. But in addition, you're seeing in this picture too, a very stressed face, closed mouth, tongue flicks, and the ears peeled back, right? So if you have like a little toy Cavachon, don't think like you have to get down on the ground and look at their little tongues to to understand how they're feeling, especially or if they're getting excessively more worried about something. I promise you the calming signals will become more and more advanced, all right? Or you'll see more and more of them. You don't need to just see the brief little tongue flicks. So another calming signal that I do really liken to almost like a puppy paw shake, like shaking hands, is the paw lift. Are they really doing that? Absolutely not. But it is one way for dogs to signal to each other that even that they don't want any problem. They're trying to signal that they are feeling relaxed even if they're not, right? So they've got this loose looking body, but you can kind of tell by the rest of the dog that, especially because they're on the scale at the vet, they're probably not feeling super awesome, but they're trying to signal to the people there that, I'm trying to cope. I feel okay. And I'm trying to be socially appropriate here. Also look at that dog too. Is that dog staring straight into the camera? No, absolutely not. They've got their head turned away. So not, again, breaking eye gaze or not staring straight at the thing that's worrying the dog is the socially appropriate thing for them to do. So if you're like, oh my gosh, my dog is so unphotogenic, I never get good pictures of the dog, they never look at the camera. Well, guess what? They don't know what the camera is. They just think mom's getting super weird shoving this box in their face, and they're trying to kind of extinguish the stress of the situation, right? They're going like, okay, well, I don't like that she's getting up in my grill. Well, I'll follow, I'll do calming signals to go, I'm not going to look at it. I'm trying to be cool here. I'm trying to be socially appropriate. Now, the picture here on the right, guilt or appeasement. Now, it might be hard for you guys to tell, but what you're seeing here is a dog with feather bits all over its face. And what it's done is probably was left at home alone for a number of hours, got bored somewhere at like, I don't know, half an hour, hour one, decided to entertain itself by tearing apart a pillow. And now mom or dad has gotten home something like 6 hours later. The dog probably has no recollection of having done what it did. And mom and dad have come home and they're upset. And you see these pictures all over Facebook and Instagram and things, people kind of, doing these funny dog shaming things, which I get a giggle with the best of everybody. But everybody thinks that their dog is guilty, looking so guilty. But really here, what this dog is trying to do is flash their canine communication signals in ways of appeasement, right? Like, I don't know why you're going nuts on me, but I'm going to do my best to throw you the puppy peace sign and try to calm you down and myself, because I have no idea why you're yelling at me right now, right? Because dogs, believe you me, they do not have a good sense of time. And they're also kind of eternal, lifelong toddlers. They're all about what's in it for me. So if they had access to this pillow and it was fun, shredding it to bits, then they just had fun, and they will unfortunately likely do it again if they found it really fun and you leave a similar pillow out again. But it's not because like they're trying to I don't know, dominate you or be stinkers. They're just about what's in it for me. They got bored. It was a fun game. And I promise you too, when people tell you, yeah, look how guilty my dog is, my dog will never do it again. They knew what I was saying. They're never going to do it again. They have no clue. I can promise you they have no clue, and they will do it again. So please don't think that your dog understood that what you're yelling at them meant that they should never tear up that pillow again. It happened 6 hours ago. They've long forgotten. Okay. So anyway, moving right along. So why, again, have we just spent some time here on learning about canine communication signals? We go much more into it in our routine program, again, kind of as a teaser. If you'd like to join our program, we do go through an additional orientation where we teach you a lot more about canine communication. But we do find it very important, again, for you to be able to advocate for your dog, and then also progress them, because you can advocate for them, that you understand what they're saying. You understand when they're worried or stressed or happy, and can move along accordingly. Because if we don't understand what they're trying to say, tell us with their body language, they will feel like they have to speak louder. And that's where you get into those red behaviors there, right? And that aggression ladder. And again, I kind of hate that this is called the aggression ladder. It's always like so dramatic, right? Conflict signals, an aggression ladder. Because honestly, 3/4 of it is actually all about the dog doing normal doggy things and trying to cope or signal to the other dog or person or situation that they don't want any issue with what's going on. Dogs, just like all animals, including us, have a fight or flight response. And the vast majority of the time, like 9.9 times out of 10, they will flee if given the opportunity, or try to dissipate the anxiety or the conflict, right? So they're at the bottom of this quote unquote aggression ladder is the stuff that is, again, not really conflict. It's really calming. Yawning, blinking, nose licking, turning the head away, turning the body away, sitting, pawing, which is also meaning like lifting their paw, walking away. And then you kind of get in the ones where, especially if they're stacking on top of each other, kind of indicate that they're feeling a little bit more on the genuine anxious side, right? And it's only if nothing changes or nobody responds or pay attention or the situation doesn't stop that they usually ever get to the point where they're growling, snapping, or biting. So anyway, so that's kind of the good news too, and why we spend so much time is that in theory, if we understand our dog's body language, we can extinguish the threat, so to speak, just by figuring out when they're starting to trigger stack, right? Or go up that aggression ladder. So so it says dogs can signal an aggressive reaction towards others by displaying certain behaviors that we call threatening signals. And so that's, kind of like the growling, the air snapping, and biting. What some of the things, so humans, interestingly, do things to dogs that tend to get them to that orange and red zone really quickly, because in the dog world, they are very threatening behaviors. And those happen to be hugging, petting on top of the head, and leaning over. And so you're probably thinking like, dear God, don't we all do that to dogs all the time? And the thing is, yes, we do. And that's the thing is, dogs are more tolerant than you could possibly ever imagine. And they do bond with us very quickly. And so they put up with a lot. But a dog brand new to a home, or a dog under a lot of stress, you go and add in like hugging, kissing, petting on top of the head, and leaning over. That's why a lot of dogs, can be in a home for only, say, like a week out of shelter and be back in there. And it's not really the dog's fault. It's because they're not settled in. They don't know these people, and all of a sudden these kind of threatening behaviors are coming at them. So why, actually, really quick, why are they threatening to the dog? Well, guess what? When you go and hug and kiss, okay, first of all, if I were in the room with you right now, and I've only been chit-chatting with you for what, like 20 minutes, and all of a sudden I came up to you and started hugging and kissing you, all right, maybe, you're down with that. But most people will go, wow, that makes me feel really uncomfortable. And depending on your quote unquote temperament or past experiences, you might go, okay, I'm going to just talk to Maggie later and explain to her that I don't really like that. Or you might clock me, right? So petting on top of the head, same thing. I don't know about you, but if I were to come up to you and greet you by coming straight at like your eyeballs and your forehead and then pat you on top of the head, I find that very annoying and condescending. And dogs do too. We just tend to teach them that it's acceptable, and they put up with a lot. Leaning over, especially for a small dog, it's just a knee-jerk reaction to find that threatening, right? Like this big, giant leaning over you that could be klutzy and lose their balance and land on you. It's natural for them to want to not be like right underneath you or feel a little bit threatened by it. So in this picture with this baby, what do you see? So I talked to you about that flight or fight response. This poor dog has kind of been cornered, right? Now, he also has probably been in this house before this baby even came along and has already tolerated a lot with this baby. And do I really feel like this baby is in danger? Probably not. Probably not. But what if this dog was brand new to this home, had just been adopted, and now the family's put this dog in this position also put this baby in this position? I would find this very worrisome. Clearly the dog is tolerating, it's not happy, that mouth is closed, it's not full whale eye, but it's looking very stiff, looking away, ears back, trying its best to be polite and cute to the child, like, hey, you're really cornering me, making me feel uncomfortable. But again, the baby's not going to understand. So again, this is why we spend so much time on it, is because we need you to advocate for your dog, for your children, for your neighbors, especially when a dog is new to a home. So not to beat the dead horse, but hugs, again, really, really intimidating to dogs, especially if they don't have a relationship with the child. So usually okay with children in the home eventually, but definitely not something that you should let the neighborhood kids be doing. And this is why so many kids get bit in the face, is they don't have a relationship with the dog, and they come up and they do this threatening gesture towards the dog. So how does one pet a new dog, especially if they're a stranger to the dog or the dog is new to the home? We always say chin to chest is always best, because then you're not bringing the hand right at their eyeballs and their sensitive parts like their mouth and their ears, and doing the condescending pat 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 on the head. You're actually touching them in a place that they really really enjoy, and your hand comes in low, and they usually just really enjoy that chin to chest. If you were to if the dog came in close to you and you felt like they didn't back off after you pet them chin to chest, then back petting would be appropriate too. But again, you don't start head and go all the way to tail. The appropriate way to pet a dog on their back is shoulders to rump, but not all the way down to the tail. Also for greetings, especially with shy dogs, or again to a strange dog, and you should coach people when they first meet your dog, especially if you know your dog has shyness tendency, is that sideways rules. Because what if you're standing sideways, you put the ball in the dog's court, that they approach you if they would like. You're not staring them down. You're not leaning over, and honestly, that's how really dogs greet each other, right? Like they might come head on for a second, a very brief nose interaction, but then immediately go parallel to each other, side to side, or in a circular motion, and sniffing rear ends. And that is a socially appropriate way for dogs to greet one another. In fact, that's why I always tell my clients, like, just don't let dogs interact on leash unless it's 100% necessary. You know the dogs have a relationship already, because when we have them on leash and they can't greet each other appropriately, or we do this human thing where it's like, oh, they're sniffing butts, and we try to stop them from doing it. I have no idea why, because that's really what they need to do. That's how they greet each other. That is appropriate. So in dog language, again, we've mentioned this before, straight on head to head direct eye contact is a threat. And again, we, not to beat the dead horse, but people send us these pictures and videos all the time, like, look at what my kid does with my dog. And it's like, oh, and near gives us a heart attack. But at the same time, again, these two animals, the human and the dog, have grown up together. So this dog is putting up with a lot. But this would not be cool, like the first few weeks in a brand new home, in my book, that, or that dog otherwise be being a saint. Also the picture again with the dog at the vet clinic. The vet tech is trying to get this dog on the scale, but just that whole leaning over, grabbing the dog over the head, or petting the dog on the head, does that dog look comforted at all? Absolutely not. I mean, the dog's freaking out. If the gentleman just probably walked away and then walked along parallel with the scale, the dog would probably go straight on it, especially if a few treats were involved. So how can you tell if a dog wants a belly rub? Because we get asked this a lot. And because sometimes we don't really love using the words, dominant and submissive. But a lot of times belly rubs can be kind of almost like a submissive appeasement type of behavior. And then other times it's very much like, I love belly rubs. Will you please scratch my belly? So in this picture, and it's also hard to read canine communication when the dogs are on the back, although you will see usually a lot of whale eye if they're really not loving it. And I can kind of tell from this picture that this dog is all about the belly rub here. But the best way to tell if a dog ever wants a belly rub or enjoys being touched in general is to go in, give them the little belly rub, or go and pet that chin to chest for about 3 to 5 seconds, and then pull your hand away. And then what happens? Does the dog pop up and go away, or just said thanks for the pet, now I'm out of here? Fine, good. It's like they were being socially appropriate, nice, but then that's all they wanted, right? They're still not like, just not super into the experience. But let's say this girl pulled her hand away, and also the dog looks at her like, why did you stop? Maybe shimmies on its back towards the girl, or the dog that's being pet chin to chest, you stop, and they move in and get like on your, almost in your lap. That is a dog's way of saying, yes, I did actually really genuinely want to, to make out with you, to be pet by you. So please go ahead and do some more. So it's essentially a consent test, if you will. But it really is helpful for the shy dogs who are trying to do their best to to be cool and that do want to interact with you, but especially in the beginning, can only take so much. All right, so training basics. Now we're going into some really important training basics. Dogs work for 2 reasons. Actually, all animals work for 2 reasons, kind of similar to the fight or flight. And when it goes for working or doing something, it is either to increase behavior, to have things reoccur because they like it, or to have things stop because they didn't like it. Okay, so when you're talking about training, when we refer to punishment is something that suppresses behavior. It is something that makes behavior go away or lessen. Reinforcement, and if you have figured out, we're positive reinforcement trainers. So we add rewards into the environment, something positive, something that and positive actually in the behavior psych labs means to add something to the environment, like a positive negative, not like good bad, but it means add. So we add things to the environment that increase behavior. And we use in our classes a lot of treats and food, because guess what? It's a primary reinforcer. Dogs need it to live, and you tend to be able to train really quickly and really effectively because the dogs are very motivated to get more food and cookies or treats. So old methods, unfortunately, are very much based in punitive techniques. I'm certainly guilty of it as well. I remember my mom used to, and only stopped recently, bred dogs all my life, and I would go and I would help her train them. And I remember us, even like at 6 years old, she would be reading these dog training books to me, and it would be, when your dog potties on the floor, you shove their nose in it and you spank them as hard as you think they can tolerate it a few times, and then they'll learn not to potty on the floor. So, not cool, but like the books of the best people, training people at the time, told you to do it. And did it stop a lot of bad behaviors? Sure, because the dog did not want to have their nose shoved in their fecal matter and spanked again, right? So punishment does work. We're not saying punishment doesn't work. It's just mean, and also it suppresses behavior. Not only the behavior you don't want, but that behavior you'd like to see instead. It also stifles creativity, optimism, desire to participate with training, and it really deteriorates relationships. So it's not fun for the dog. So we're all 100% positive reinforcement trainers, and our dogs love to be trained because it's good for them. And guess what? It's also good for you. And you get this, there's this energy about it. And your dogs are always trying to do what you'd like them to do instead of, worrying about what they're going to get punished for. So here's an example. let's say you get really frustrated that when the doorbell rings, that your dog, barks, throws a tizzy, jumps all over the people coming in. And so, and especially in the books of old, you'd be like, they'd be like, whop them with a newspaper, knee them in the chest, scream and yell, step on their toes. Um, and and eventually, like, the dog will probably stop doing it because it hurts and they don't want any more of it. But meanwhile, your dog goes, ugh, gosh, the doorbell rang again, and it's going to be these strangers that create fear and pain for me. And so all of a sudden, there's this really negative association with people coming over. Now, go positive reinforcement training side, the doorbell rings, and you pull out your treats and you have your dog sit and lay down and wait until they're told to greet the person coming in, and the new person comes and gives them treats down low to prevent them from jumping. Essentially, you've trained them. Strangers are great, not to bark and act like a loon when the doorbell rings, to be calm and not to jump up. So what's the disadvantage? You have to buy treats, okay, or find your dog's favorite toys or motivators to reinforce the good behavior. So here's like a little quiz. If your dog jumped up on you when you came home from work and you yelled and pushed them off, is this a punishment or a reward? I'm going to give you a hint, so you can read below. Dogs repeat behaviors that are rewarding. Okay. So I know I'm guilty. One of my dogs, I come in and he'll jump on me. And do I yell and knee him in the chest or anything? Absolutely not. But the behavior hasn't gone away. He's an 18-month-old, but he's just under 18 months. It hasn't gone away. It's getting better. And the reason is I haven't trained him what I'd like to yet. I haven't trained him what to do instead. But a lot of people do adopt these techniques of like, okay, if I knee them in the chest, they'll stop. If I step on their toes, if I just scream, yell enough, or if I just, ask them to sit a million times, even though they're totally not listening to you because they're so jazzed up that you've come home. The reason why they keep doing it over and over and over again is because they've gotten your attention. It's not punishment to them, okay? Surely if you need them so hard in the chest that you broke a couple of ribs or something, that would be quite punishing, and I bet you they wouldn't do it ever again. But I mean, do you really want to do that to your dog? Absolutely not. So it's our example of, if you've got a problem behavior and it's not lessening, or it's getting worse, or it's not going away, it's probably because you're inadvertently reinforcing the behavior. Just even being like, oh, get off me, oh, you naughty bad dog. They've gotten your attention. They got you getting all excited and vocal, just like they are barking and jumping all over you, right? It is a reinforcing behavior. So just something to think about. Also a little, if you can't figure out by the end of this how you would solve that, then take our classes, because we'll teach you. All right, so this is a video about it's kind of a crash course in how to train a behavior. Zoom does not play videos very well. There's a disconnect between the audio and the action. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stop share, and I'm going to do a quick demo with my 17-month-old puppy, and show you what Amy's going to show you. Also in this video, she uses a clicker. And right now, because we're still doing a lot of our Zoom classes with virtually, where we don't use the clicker as much as we used to. And I want you guys just to see it with using the word yes to mark behavior. So what I'm going to be doing with him is I'm going to teach you the basics of training. And believe it or not, the basics of training are to capture a behavior. It's just to let the dog do what they naturally do. And that's what capture means, is if the dog sits and you want to see more of it, then you mark it and you reinforce it. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to use the word yes as my marker, and I'm going to give a treat as my reinforcement. And if he likes the treat, he's going to do more of it. Now, why am I just waiting for him to sit on his own? Is because he does not understand well, he does at this point because I've taught him. But dogs do not pop out of their mama dogs understanding what SIT means. In fact, they don't, regardless of how old they are, until you teach them what the expectation is for what you want them to do. So really the training behavior chain goes, you wait for behavior, you mark it, you treat it or reinforce it. And then when you get the pattern going, you teach them the human word for what you want them to do. So I'm going to show you. So let's see, and I haven't done the capture in a little bit. So at first I'm going to just wait him out. I'm going to wait for him. Oh wait, you know what? I have to stop share. Excuse me. It'll just take me a moment to stop share. Alrighty, and hopefully you guys can see me with my dog. This is Kai. He is a roughly 18-month-old Australian Shepherd who is mostly a COVID puppy, not intentionally. I got him a few months before COVID kicked in. And so, what did you grab? Oh, you found a mask. Drop it. So he loves to chew up masks. See, I told you he was a pandemic puppy. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring him out here. I'm going to tilt this a little bit more. And I'm going to just wait for him to sit. And then I'm going to mark it and I'm going to yes it and treat him. So again, I'm just going to yes. So this tends to be his default behavior anyway. So obviously I didn't have to wait very long. I tossed a treat to reset him. Yes. And so my yes point is when his bottom hits the floor. Yes. I'm going to do just a couple more. Yes. Now, when you're getting this pattern, when you would bet yourself, yes, $50 or whatever your motivating value is that your dog's going to repeat the behavior again, yes, you introduce the human signal, the human cue. Sit, yes. Did you hear that? I put that in like a half second before I predicted he would do it. Sit, yes. Sit, yes. Sit, yes. And the same thing goes for a hand signal. If you want to add a hand signal in, got the pattern still going. I lifted my hand, he sits. All right, I didn't guess that, sorry. Yes. All right, I'm just using my treat placement. He's just getting the one treat, yes. But I am tossing so he'll come back and do it again. And so that's how you get that chain going. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that little live demo instead of watching a video. And I am going to share screen again, and we're going to go to the last quarter or so of our presentation. Okay, it usually takes just a minute to get loaded back up. And where's my chat function? Just want to make sure. Okay, chat. Alrighty. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that, and please chat me if you, for some reason, are not seeing the presentation again. It should be a slide that says, what is resource guarding? And why we cover this is, one, it is just chock full of canine communication signals, but it's also a huge normal problem for especially recently adopted dogs. It's also a pretty big problem for puppies and all dogs and people. Guess what? We're resource guarders, right? What, again, if I were in the room with you and I walked over to you and I tried to steal your iPhone or your, I don't know, Xbox or your wallet, depending on your temperament and your past experiences, and you might be like, ooh, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I'll tell her later. We'll try to get Maggie to be more cool. Or you could clock me, right? You could fight back. Maybe you got, potentially mugged or something at some point in your life. And that's the thing too, is a lot of us who have rescue shelter foster dogs, we don't know a lot of our dogs' past histories. Even if you're pretty lucky and you've got to get and lucky is a relative word because you have to go through all the house training and everything. But let's say you get a puppy, still you don't know what the, if that puppy barely survived with its mother, or or if so, there's a lot of science behind if mothers are really stressed, then the babies get that anxiety in utero, etc. So anyway, resource guarding, it's common. Don't freak out. The best way to avoid it, though, or to make it not become a serious problem, is to be able to recognize it. It's not antagonize the dog. A lot, again, going back to recommendations of old, books of old, even a decade ago when I was teaching puppy classes, we would be like, okay, and now, and it wouldn't be like the Caesar Milan kind where you'd be like, now you dominate the dog and you alpha them and you do mean things to them just to show your boss. Grab that food away. That's ridiculous, by the way, absolutely ridiculous. And if anything, if you do that crud, you're going to cause resource guarding. But again, we used to do these in puppy classes, even positive reinforcement puppy classes. We would go in, we'd dive in, and we'd mess with their food. Oh, get them used to your hands being in their food bowl. Well, what it was doing, though, is in certain cases is creating resource guarding. The dogs were like, why are you doing that? That's just straight up rude. Just like as if you went to a restaurant and you got served food and 3 bites in, somebody grabbed your plate, or somebody stuck their hand in your food, you'd be probably really crabby about it too, right? So what is resource guarding? Resource guarding is a dog's desire to keep something that they consider valuable, all right, like a coveted item. Most of us have heard that, growing up, you leave the dog alone when it's eating. Don't try to steal that, that bone from the dog. But resource guarding can also be people, favorite places, favorite toys. I've known the example of Kleenex cardboard. I didn't put that in there, but man, I've worked with clients with dogs who are really pretty good about other items, except if they got a snotty Kleenex, and they would take somebody down to keep out that snotty Kleenex. So it's interesting. It can be very personal. It can be just whatever the dog is fixated on, that they just don't want you to take it away from them. And oftentimes, unfortunately, it's because they've had some sort of experience with it where it was taken away from them, and so it created this knee-jerk reaction in their brains to then therefore want to protect it moving forward. So okay, hold on, sorry, this is the lag. All right. Oh, and also in this picture here, this dog this dog's being very, very tolerant. Again, I told you people send us crazy things. Is chewing on a bone, and the child isn't trying to take the bone away, just like laying on top of the dog. So again, our dogs tend to be very, very tolerant, and it's not necessarily about just taking things away. It's also just being inappropriate in general when they have things that can kick in these resource guarding tendencies. So don't have one of these children. So what is the rule of thumb? How do you not accidentally get resource guarding to kick in? Or if you do have the issue, first and foremost, just drop the idea of, which I mentioned before, of ever fooling around with the food bowl. Okay, it's just, or our favorite toy, or if the dog is, especially if the dog is resting in their safe place or in their crate or in a beloved spot. Okay, just leave them alone. But there's going to be times where your dog, especially like puppies, or all of a sudden, let's say their favorite spot is the one place on the couch where you like to hang out, and you have mild pet allergies, and you just don't want them to be in that spot, or they've grabbed your favorite shoes, or they've gotten something dangerous like a chocolate bar or a pill. Well, then yes, you need to get that away from them, or you need to teach them that it's not, you're not allowed in that spot. And usually management is really, really important. Okay, so the first step, if you're having issues with your dog stealing things or going to places where you don't want them to, then if it's a location, don't let them go there in the first place. You know, don't. And that's the thing too, is people are like, oh, I'm gonna want to sleep my puppy to sleep in the bed, and then when they get ginormous and they're like 100 pounds and accidentally kicking them out of the bed in the middle of the night from their sheer size, they go, well, now I don't want them there anymore. Well, that's a much harder thing to break because you allowed it for so long, right? So especially if you have younger dogs or you've got these patterns that are popping up, decide, do you want it to continue or not? When it comes to taking things, though, again, management, if your dog steals your favorite shoes or your dirty, smelly socks, then don't leave them out. Step one. Then they won't practice chewing them up and it won't taste delicious and they won't keep doing it. But things happen. And believe you me, I have 3 kids. Things happen all the time in my house. And so we're really, really expert at the exchange technique. This technique goes by a lot of different names. It can be Traja, just let it go, the bait and switch, you know, the beginning stages of the drop it behavior. It's essentially that you're exchanging with the dog equally, fairly, like something of equal value or higher value. And then what you get is you get a dog who will very gladly give up things because they usually get something of equal value or better instead. Okay, so this is a quick little video. It's super quick. If for some reason it doesn't play very well for you on your end, you could always request that that we send it to you. But I'll just tell you what it is Bruce is going to do a trade up for this Kong. And the audio might not sync up with it, but I think you'll still get the gist. Here we go. And why is it not playing? Huh. I'm gonna go. Okay, sorry, my computer froze up a little bit. Let's try this one more time. Darn it. All right. Well, I'm going to explain to you what happens in this video. So the Kong was there. Really, was did the Kong need to leave the dog? No. But what Bruce did, because he knew Honey was enjoying the Kong, was he came in with a little handful of potato chips and he spills it on the floor, and Honey gladly hands him the Kong, just like spits it out, was like, take it, right? Like who wouldn't for the potato chips? So if anybody needs to see that at the end, I could do a quick demo with my dog, but it really is about being fair, or better than fair, so that you get dogs who will gladly give things up. So let's go to the next slide. And again, I'm having this really huge lag in between slides and everything now. There we go. All right. Also, we don't ever want you to punish a growl, which should sound probably counterintuitive, right? It's like, well, gosh, I don't want my dog to practice growling at things. But here's the thing, is your growl is your smoke alarm, right? That if you punish growls and your dogs lose the ability to growl, it's as if you've gone and pulled your batteries from your smoke alarm. So if there actually is a fire, you don't get the annoying like beepity beepity beep that could save your life. In this case, it's more that you've eliminated your dog's ability to communicate to you that they are at that dark orange red place on the aggression ladder, or the conflict scale. So growls actually are really good information. If a dog has the ability to growl, it hasn't been punished out of them, they will they will always growl before they usually get to ear snaps and bites. So, and some dogs don't ear snap, it's not, there's a whole bunch of like little in-between progressions between growling. It's usually there's like lip curling and snarling and things that go too. But usually growl is a number one. So just so you know, don't be afraid of growls. They give you information. I have a colleague who's like, thank you when her dog growls, which I don't go that far, but I sure as heck start advocating for my dog. And it's usually just getting out of Dodge. It's usually like, my dog does not need to meet the creepy clown person in the clown costume right now. and nor do I. So we leave. Let's go. So anyway, please don't ever punish a growl because that is your little alarm system. All right. So, but what do you do if you do recognize that your dog is afraid of people in creepy clown situations or costumes? Well, I mean, you could avoid them, but let's say this is very important to you. You like to go to the local circus all the time, and you're going to see these folks everywhere. Well, then what we want to, and we spend a lot of time on this in our classes, is that we teach you this classical conditioning technique. It's also referred to in the literature as counter conditioning technique. It goes by a lot of names, like look at that, what's that, who's that. The DMT, it's a distraction. You mark it, you treat it. De-engage, disengage, again, goes by a lot of different names. But the technique is very, very, very effective. And what it is it's kind of a retro socialization technique in which if your dog sees something that might cause them nervousness, or they don't love, or they just don't understand it, then pair it with a treat and try to mark them for it, like good job, and give it to them, even though they might not be doing anything. But what you're doing is you're marking calmness, and you're going, clowns equal treats. So clowns are cool, right? So here is an example, a little picture example of this dog isn't loving the weed whacker sound. I don't know who does. But what Pat is doing here is that when her dog, first of all, I want to point out she's at a distance in which it's not too overpowering loud, and the dog is still able to maintain calmness. When the dog looks at the weed whacker, she says yes or good girl, and she gives the dog a treat. And she plays that game. It's kind of like the head toggle, like the dog looks at it, and pretty soon the dog learns, like, this is a great game. I look at that weed whacker, and I get cookies from heaven. So I'm just going to keep looking at it. And all of a sudden, your dog's emotional response to the weed whacker, the sound, the situation, the person, the experience starts to change. And sometimes very, very quickly, especially if they know this game. So in our group, we tend to call it the who is that behavior. All right. So, and this is also to teach you what to do instead of, like, let's say you find yourself in the embarrassing situation of you're walking down the street and your dog growls at a small child because you don't have, lucky you, annoying little 2 and 3-year-olds running around your house. And so your dog growls, and naturally we feel embarrassed. We're like, no, we do what the human socially appropriate thing, right? We pull them back. No, bad dog, that is so rude. Oh, sorry, honey child, blah, blah, blah. My dog's so bad. Well, here's the thing is, in your dog's mind, this child all of a sudden has become they already made him nervous to begin with because they just weren't socialized to him. But then you've gone and you started barking at the child too, and you start jerking on their leash, and they have an opposition reflex, which makes them want to even pull harder at the things that you're pulling them away from. You probably made them feel protective, resource guardy about you, and all of a sudden your dog starts going like, gosh, I'm gonna have to look out for those kids. They cause a real drama. All right, so what should you do instead? If it's about going back to that who's that thing. It's all about associations. If your dog, let's say, again, growled at this 2-year-old who is, I don't know, running around like a fool, which, can be kind of intimidating to dogs, get to a distance away from the situation where your dog's calm again, and start going, every time they look at that child, give them a treat. Anytime you are walking near a park, your dog even hears the children's sounds and sees little kids running around, they get cookies from heaven. You're going to get dogs that are like, can't wait to see that next kid, can't wait to see him. So the bottom line is, reward what you like, you'll get lots more of it. And believe it or not, one of the things that people take for granted, but we work a lot in our classes on, is reward for calm, reward for what you want to see. And a lot of times, most things that people complain about is hyper or over arousal or kind of fear, like anxiety-based behaviors, because we don't tell them enough when they're being good, and when they're being calm, and when they're behaving appropriately around things. So reward what you like, you'll get lots more of it. All right, so quick little plug for our classes is that we do an orientation for you. We cover a little bit more on canine communication. We teach you a heck of a lot more about training and how to go about it. We give you homework to start even before you go to the working classes, which are with your dogs. And we teach right now in-person classes and virtual classes. So based on your comfort level, we are rolling admission. You don't have to take our classes in the order that they are here, with the exception of you have to start with the orientation first, because we're clicker training based, positive reinforcement training based, and it isn't something that's really easy to just walk into a class and be a pro at it. So we kind of want you to be a pro at it before you even do it with your dog, so you're not experimenting or both floundering. We both have a baseline coming into the working classes. You can take, again, our classes in any order at any of our 5 locations. In addition, we have virtual, which you can take from, wherever in the world, I guess, at this point. I know we have lots of people coming into our virtual classes from all sorts of states right now, which is pretty exciting. So there are some bonuses to this virtual pandemic thing. And in their classes, again, a rolling admission. It's on the human schedule, so you don't have to take them week by week. You could take one a month. You could take some in person and some virtually. You can take one in one location and one in another. The good news is that the information is the same despite who your trainer is, where you take it. We've got these 3 classes in which we have roughly 5 core behaviors that we work on every single class, because we want them mastered by the time you leave our program, because we just consider them really great essential core behaviors they'll help you and your dog lifelong. And then on top of it, we have some really important themes in which you will feel like you have a lot more control. And again, we'll have some really good basics. The yellow class is predominantly on recall. The blue class is predominantly about what do you do when things go wrong. And the green class is, you don't need Maggie telling you exactly what to do to shape a behavior. We're going to teach you the magical properties of your clicker and positive reinforcement training. So my friends, that is our intro to training presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to go to our chat. I'm going to actually stop share first. Go to our chat. And this is, I actually did pretty well with time. It's a miracle. And I'm going to go through your questions. So if you have additional ones, or something comes up from what I already start answering, then just pop it in and I will try to go down the row of questions until we hit 8:30, or I've exhausted everybody prior to that. All right, would love to hear about the best way to approach small dog puppy to pick her up. Really, 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 really good question. Excellent question. So again, the leaning over can be really, really intimidating, right? And then also, young puppies are like land sharks. You come at their mouths and they're like, even if it's like out of love and excitement, it's like their mouths are coming at you. So the best way to do it is to bring them in parallel and make them do the work. Bring them under your arm. In fact, I will show you with my guy. I'm not going to pick him up because he's like 60 pounds at this point, but I'll show you the body position really quick. Okay, hold on, I'm gonna move the chat function because I can't see what the heck I'm doing here. Oops. Let me go to speaker view. Sorry, friends. Okay, forget speaker view. I'm not gonna do that. Okay, so for picking up a puppy, what I do is I will put my arm out and then I will lead them. I'll just use a little treat magnet, basically like a little lure, to get them to go where I want them to go. And which is usually, to support them properly, is to pick them up under their chest, right? So do you see that? I just, let me see if I can do that one more time here. Oops, I'm using that huge thing. All right, come here. So doot, 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 and like guide them under your, and then you're also, if you're treating them, you're keeping their mouth busy so they're not going like chewing on your clothes or your hair. And then you go lift. Of course he is no longer in puppy face. He's like, what the heck are you doing, Mom? All right, so that is the technique that I would use. Especially you're gonna need it as they get bigger, and then it'll get to the point where, you know, you're not really picking them up anymore unless they're a small breed. Okay, so let's go back to chat. Okay, alrighty. You can share a video on your desktop. Okay, so I think somebody was helping somebody else with the just being able to hit share screen down. I think somebody was helping somebody out with the, hopefully, or maybe somebody was trying to help me. Yes, just anyway, thank you. Thank you to Nevin for being a friend with the IT stuff. All right. Okay. Oh, can dogs learn resource guarding from other dogs? My puppy is resource guarding, showing teeth because he learned it during play. If that makes sense. Absolutely. In fact, I've struggled with some of the learning resource guarding from other dogs with this puppy, because my other dog, not to label her, but she is rescue. Okay, so she's got a whole slew of problems, and she does great. But I've had her for 6.5 years, and she's still a work in progress. And one of her things is actually she does not resource guard from people, but she resource guards from other dogs. And I really have to be careful with the two dogs, because especially when he was a really young puppy, I was afraid, not that she would kill him per se, but like really hurt him if they were ever to struggle over a high value like food resource item or a favorite bone or a favorite toy. And she's overcorrected him a few times. There's always going to be accidents, and I in turn then have had to work with him to not be as guardy as she is. And so what we do is we do work, first of all, management is key. I work a lot of like trying not to have that practice. So if your dog goes to a puppy play group where other dogs are resource guarding a lot, I would quit that group. I would, because rehearsal, the more dogs rehearse certain things, the harder it is to break it. So, but then also what I've done with my pup, way more than I've had to do with any of the other dogs, even because that's the thing, when my reactive dog, she's almost always been with another dog, but when my previous dog died and she was solo for a little bit, I mean, we like saw none of it because there was no other dog competition. And interestingly, she doesn't do it at doggy day camp. I think mostly because she doesn't know those dogs very well, so she doesn't dare mess with it because she's ultimately a very fearful dog. But with him, she's like, I'm boss, I will destroy you if you try to grab my bone. So again, management, and then I have worked with them a lot, and him, is anti-resource guarding exercises, which is majorly trading up for things, which is if you see something you think you're not supposed to have, bring it to me, which is, he has a really great drop it most of the time, unless the other dog's around, and then it becomes a little bit tense. But again, we practice these exercises where we try to take the value away out of certain things, or that there's higher value in giving it up or leaving it alone. He has a very good leave it, right? Like so does she. If I see them going for something, leave it. And they come running back to me for the treat instead of getting in a fight over the bone. So there's lots and lots of techniques for that, especially if you take our program. And you can actually do this solo too, everybody. But if you take our program, we spend some time on some anti-resource guarding type of skills. But we also, part of our program is a half-an-hour phone call with a private trainer for anything that's really personally bugging you, is an issue that's not really being covered enough in class based on your problem. But again, what you can do is, even if you don't take our class program, you can, you won't get the mega great rate because you're already in our class program, but you can pay for individual phone consultations. If this is like happens to be your one issue, or you just don't think you can fit the classes in, you can do a private phone consult on that issue. All right, I think my dog air snaps during playtime. Okay, so I think my dog, so I'll read it, sorry. I think my dog air snaps during playtime. Is this an issue? Warning sign. Probably not. If it is playtime, and especially if your dog is younger or is just at that tipping point of over arousal, especially if even if they're an adolescent or younger adult, they're just really jacked up. And it's totally okay for them to air snap. Like when I do puppy play groups a few times a week, and my gosh, I mean, you would think if you were just listening and watching like the mouths, that these dogs were savage, like literally land sharks with horrible vocalizations. But especially puppies are hardwired to practice all that stuff. And it's really about watching their bodies. If their bodies are loose and and they'll like fake mouth, and some of it is some biting, but it's usually very inhibited. And air snapping is also an inhibited bite. So they're not, if they're air snapping, they're not biting you or they're not biting the other puppy. So it really is appropriate in states of hyperarousal or especially play if it's a younger dog. So I wouldn't worry about it too much unless you're seeing it where you feel there's also like a threat going on, like where you went to go, let's say you didn't trade up, you went to go grab your chew from your puppy or your dog who had it, and then they started air snapping. That would probably be a threat. That would probably be like, hey, I was enjoying the shoe. What are you doing? Taking it away from me, type of thing. So hopefully that is helpful. That growling, air snapping, biting is at times contextual, especially with puppies. I would not freak out at all if you've got an under 6-month-old dog. And once you get farther along in adolescence, there might be some concern. But again, that'd be a great opportunity for you potentially if it continues to use something like a private phone consultation. In which case, you're like the trainer could have you send a video, or we also have folks in our group who do in-person consults too. Even now, as the pandemic is getting a little bit better, and obviously there's social distancing and masks and safety and everything, but we'll come into your home to help do a consult. All right. So we have lots of opportunities for if you are dealing with any behavior issues. What about training a dog to be able to walk past very loud, understandably scary traffic? We have to walk to get to a park every day. Okay, so I would play that who's that game a lot. And if your dog is really struggling with kind of a fear element or anxiety element with it, if it's possible to kind of somehow avoid walking by that park until you can get the skill going, that would be ideal. Whether it's that you have to drive past it or almost carry your dog past it, or get whatever you think your dog's puppy crack is and do like a Hansel and Gretel type of thing, or almost like a constant feed as you're walking past the loud park. So you are just, again, making this 100% association of when we walk past this park, it is Candyland. It is, cheese time, chicken time. And that will hopefully get your dog past that point. Again, in a perfect world, I'd love for you to be able to start like tomorrow, only getting somewhat close to the park, letting your dog hear the sounds and see some of the scary traffic, but at a distance in which they can totally cope with it and jackpot it with chicken or whatever. And then the next day get a little bit closer, and so on and so forth, because that would be the best technique. And that would probably help generalize in loud, noisy, crazy, trafficy environments in general. But I also understand that sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So in which case, then I would just try to find a really powerful reinforcer and just, make it, this little food train or constant treating as you're walking by. So, alrighty. If we reward what we like and our dog responds, do we continue to reward indefinitely, or is there a point where the response happens and treats are no longer needed? Very, very, very good question. And the answer is yes. There, you get to a point where treats are no longer needed. In fact, we only are heavy on the treats and clicking with when you're trying to shape new behavior. Then it eventually gets to this point where it's kind of like what we refer to as like maintenance, where the dog completely understands the behavior. It might have regressions at times, with in highly distracting environments, or if your dog gets sick for a period of time or something like that. But generally speaking, you are just trying to get the behavior shaped, and then you fall on what I refer to as everyday reinforcers, like a pat on the back, praise, and other events. So let's say your dog loves going on dog walks, which a lot of dogs usually do. They love getting access to the environment, and distractions and smells and things like that. And so if you, let's say you're working on calm behavior at doorways, so you bring your dog to the door, they have to be calm to put their leash on, they do a sit, they do a down, they do a wait, you open up the door, okay, let's go. And then you go on the walk. That walk and going out the door just reinforced all those, whatever, how many I said, 5 behaviors before that. So what you don't realize a lot of times is once you've trained something, just you giving your dog like that wink, like good job, or even the soft body language yourself, or going and